Billy Graham is almost worshipped by many members of the evangelical Christian subculture, and he's certainly elevated to almost the status of an idol. Just on its own, this should be an indication that something is wrong with this picture. He's actually one of the best examples of the modern tendency of celebrity worship, elevating megachurch pastors, elevating them to the status of idols, worshipped in place of God. I was even asked by a God-hating atheist, why wasn't I worshiping Billy Graham? But as with his followers and the megachurch pastors following in his footsteps, we should look carefully at who he is and what he actually believes. Graham's biography stated that Billy Graham was a 33rd degree Freemason, and he was very proud of his reaching the top, Club 33, the very top of the pyramid in the organization of Freemasonry, joining the other great men of his time such as Harry S. Truman and Walt Disney. And Jim Shaw, a former member of Club 33, so a 33rd degree Freemason, stated in his biography that Graham was present at Shaw's initiation to the 33rd degree, and only other 33rd degree Freemasons are allowed to see the initiation of someone who attains the 33rd degree. Now, most don't know what Freemasonry really is. Well, saying, what's wrong with that? That shows he's one of the great people of the world, because all the American presidents and all the leaders of billion-dollar international multinational corporations and all famous entertainers are all Freemasons. The problem with this is because of how effective these secret societies are at hiding their truths, most of us who are uninitiated don't understand what Masonry really is. Masonry's false exterior is an elite do-gooders club, but it's a form of paganism exactly like Catholicism. So it's a religion of self-perfection through the worship of demons, where participants are supposedly earning salvation through worshiping idols. Now, all books on Freemasonry, so including Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma, Richardson's Handbook of Freemasonry, Duncan's Ritual of Freemasonry, all explain that in the Blue Lodges and the lower degrees of Freemasonry, all the lower-level Masons are intentionally deceived by the higher-level Masons. This is how some believe the lie that Freemasonry is a Christian organization. It's about as Christian as the Catholic Church is. Both of them are systems of devil worship, where the participants worship Lucifer, but under another name, so they don't know his true identity. Speaking of the Catholic Church, at least the last 13 popes have all been secret Freemasons, and all the generals of the Jesuits have been Freemasons, from the founder Loyola. The real difference between Catholicism and Freemasonry is that Masons unknowingly worship Lucifer until they get to the 33rd degree, when it's revealed to them, and Catholics unknowingly worship Satan or Saturnus, because the images that they venerate and pray to are images of the Roman god Saturnus, but they are told that it's Jesus. But Jesus is considered merely one of a long series of religious teachers in Freemasonry. Masons worship the great architect of the universe, and every level of Masonry in the higher degrees learn the worship of a different pagan god. So Masonry is the study and practice of classic paganism. Former 33rd degree Mason Jim Shaw stated in his biography that all the symbols of Masonry are in fact substitutes for symbols of phallic worship. Masonry is said to be a copy of the ancient mystery religions, so ancient paganism. These mystery religions were forms of nature worship, more specifically and most commonly the worship of the sun as the source and giver of life to the earth. Since ancient times, this worship of the sun and moon and stars in general has been sexual in its outworking and rituals, since the sun's rays penetrating the earth and bringing about new life have been central to such worship. The phallus, the male generative principle, has been worshipped as representing the sun's rays. In this way, the phallus has been worshipped, and the rituals climaxed with sexual union in the mystery religions of Isis and Osiris, Tammuz, Moloch, Bacchus, Saturnus, Artemis, Cybele. In summary, then, since the ancient mysteries, especially those of Egypt, are in fact the old religion of which Freemasonry is a revival, the symbols of Masonry should be expected to be phallic in their true meaning, and this in fact is the case. So Billy Graham professed outward Christianity, but his actual religion was a sex cult. The myth of Billy Graham is many people were converted, especially in the early years of Graham's ministry, that he must be sincere. But this need not be the case. It's the power of God's word and the testimony of the Bible, not Billy Graham, that reached hearts of Billy Graham can be a fake, and God can still use him, just as God is still speaking to dead churches, even though no one is listening. Graham's followers and admirers are stupidly substituting the work of Billy Graham for the work of God. His whole life was a lie. It's completely illogical to deduce from that Graham's popularity had anything to do with God. There's no limit to God's power, even though Billy Graham's life was a lie. Gregory Miller interviewed people who worked for Graham in his first revival in 1950 for his documentary Billy Graham, Forerunner of the Antichrist. Records that all these people stated as soon as Graham's revival left town, everybody's life went back to exactly as it had been before, as if nothing had happened. Does this sound like a real revival? Both Graham's biographers and former workers in the Graham Foundation all stated that all the people at Graham's revivals, especially the televised ones, were all from local churches, not unbelievers waiting to be converted. They were from churches that already believed. At the 33rd degree of Freemasonry, it is revealed to the candidate that the God that they really worship is in fact Lucifer. Lucifer from the Bible, the devil, Satan. And all confirm this in both Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma and Manly P. Hall in The Lost Keys of Freemasonry. And Manly P. Hall is considered, both him and Albert Pike are considered the supreme commanders of Freemasonry. If you want an authority on Freemasonry, and both of them state in their books that when the initiate reaches the 33rd degree, it is then revealed to him that all his power and his success in the world all comes from the seething, surging energies of Lucifer, to quote Manly P. Hall on page 48 of The Lost Keys of Freemasonry. Real Christians can't worship God and Satan too. And because Billy Graham was so proud of being a Freemason, when he reached the 33rd degree and he learned that the God he was really worshiping was in fact Lucifer, God's most hated enemy, according to the Bible. Instead of turning away from it, which is what a real Christian would have done, he instead embraced Freemasonry and became more loyal and more obedient to it. So this shows, if anything, that Billy Graham was a fake, because Christians can't be Freemasons. In spite of all the excuses used to justify their actions, they're deceived. How could they possibly know? Well, they should know from the beginning, because any Christian who reads his Bible, who's more than a nominal Christian, would know from reading the 10 Commandments that to bow down in front of another man, call him worshipful master or pope, and obey his mandates, his lodge mandates, unquestioningly as if he were God, is a form of idolatry. So any Christian should know that it's wrong to be a Freemason. Freemasonry is sin. Yet Billy Graham was proud of his sublime degree he had achieved in the Freemasons. So Billy Graham was a total fraud. In Wise as Serpents, author Fritz Springmeier explains how Billy Graham is the greatest fraud ever perpetuated on the American public. He was just an actor playing a role. But to prove this, I have quotes from an interview he did with Robert Schuller, another famous Freemason televangelist, also a liar and deceiver. And in this interview, Graham stated that there are many other ways to heaven, that you don't need to ever see a Bible or have anything to do with God or Jesus to make it into heaven. Now, I've heard Smilin' Joel down in Dallas speak almost the identical words in an interview as Graham says here. And this is antinomianism. This is a heresy. Especially note here the final quote from Robert Schuller. He sounds very, very pleased. Billy is admitting that he believed there are many ways to heaven, not just Jesus. So both of these two were false teachers and crooks, preaching a nominal Christianity that barely pays lip service to the truth of the Bible. Here I've also included a photo, one of many photos, of Billy Graham shaking the hand of an Arab Freemason, giving him the Masonic grip in the handshake, and bowing down to this Arab Freemason. How could a real Christian bow down to a pagan enemy of God? Today, Islam has taken over the Catholic Church's role as persecutor and killer of Christians. Even the lowest levels of Freemasonry after their secret initiation are all told that they must lie and use all forms of deception to keep the secrets that are given to them in the lodge. And this clearly is against the Bible, because especially the New Testament has many prohibitions against lying, and even more so for evangelists, deacons, and elders. In Ephesians 4:15 and in Revelation 21:8, liars will not inherit the kingdom of God. Yet Masons are told and instructed to lie and to deceive, and the very worst condemnation in the Bible is reserved for deceivers, false teachers, especially false teachers, such as Billy Graham and these televangelists. They will be in the very depths of hell. Freemasons are taught from the very beginning they must lie and deceive, and especially balance their deeds, so no one will see that they're really evil. They cover up their evil with a cloak, a false cloak of good deeds, which 1 Peter speaks specifically against. 1 Peter 2:16 says specifically, almost as if he knew he would be speaking about Freemasons, not using your liberty for a cloak of maliciousness, but as servants of God. On pages 105 to 108 in his biography, Jim Shaw, former 33rd degree Mason and worshipful master of the lodge, describes an event that every Scottish Rite or higher degree Mason celebrates on the Thursday before Easter. And Jim Shaw explains, as he describes the ritual and explains his participation, that it's a black mass that celebrates the death of Christ. The death, not his resurrection, just his death. So this is a very anti-Christian ritual. Indeed, it is a satanic mass, and all Scottish Rite Masons participate in this. So that means Billy Graham participated in this too. And it's very much like the Mass in Catholicism, where the Catholic Mass overemphasizes the death of Christ, so that the Catholics must be reminded continually of a dying Christ who must continually die. And the object of this is the same here as it is with the Masons, to emphasize to them a dead Christ. So again, this is a blasphemous, very blasphemous ritual. A real Christian who's read the words of Ephesians 5:11, which state, "And have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them," would not be keeping secrets for the Masons and helping to further their plan of turning the world into hell for their god Lucifer. Freemasonry is completely opposed to Christianity, especially in its secret plans as enemies of God. Freemasonry is a demonic spirit of elitism, the very opposite of Christianity. Yet Billy Graham called himself a Christian while participating in these satanic rituals, identical to the rituals of witchcraft. Billy, upon reaching the top of the pyramid, being immediately beside the all-seeing eye of Lucifer, was so thrilled where, if he ever really believed, and that's the real question, the fact that he could throw his faith away just for success in the world and being praised by these demon-infested leaders of the world, shows that really his loyalty was a product to be sold to the highest bidder, and his price for deceiving and in fact betraying his followers was the chance to be a hanger-on in the inner circle of the most powerful men in the world. Also, a documentary called The Deepest, Darkest Documentary, which is an expose of Jeffrey Epstein and his powerful friends and the fun they had on Pleasure Island, which were probably similar to Diddy's freak-offs, the sex parties that he hosted with such Christian celebrities as T.D. Jakes and Lecrae, going deep in the ice cream. But anyway, this documentary explained with pictures that part of the 33rd degree Masonic initiation involves a ceremony with the little boy bride. Now, if Graham participated in this is really disgusting. He thought he could participate in satanic rituals and still call himself a minister of Christ. 1 Corinthians 10:20-21 states, "We cannot worship both at God's table and at the table of demons too." Anyone who reaches the 33rd degree of Freemasonry, by the time they get to the top of the pyramid, they have become a master of deception. There's no way Billy Graham could have been a real Christian, because all the books about Freemasonry, Masonic practitioners' books, not books for the general public about Freemasonry, but their own books about Freemasonry, openly states that Masonry is the exact opposite of Christianity. So no one can be a, quote, Christian and a Mason at the same time. It is impossible. That's why Jesus said in Matthew 6:24 and Luke 16:30, 13, no one can serve two masters. A Mason and a quote Christian is a Freemason, serving and worshipping Lucifer. So the real God that Billy Graham worshipped was in fact Lucifer, just like these pictures of these famous Freemasons I'm about to show you. Now, as a bonus, I've included some pictures of some of Billy Graham's lodge bros, some of his lodge brothers that are also Freemason televangelists, giving the sign of Lucifera or the devil horns. And we've got such obvious crooks as Kenneth Copeland and Jesse Duplantis and Benny Hinn, all thieves and liars, as well as Smilin' Joel Osteen from Dallas. Despite what they may say, none of them are rich because they're God's favorites. They're all secret Freemasons, fleecing the flock. Is your pastor a Freemason? 2 John verses 9 to 11 basically says anyone who supports the work of a false teacher or a deceiver, or even otherwise encourages them to continue their deception, so in this case insert a Freemason, is a partaker of his evil deeds according to God's morality.